the Supreme Court announced on Wednesday that it would decide the fate of TikTok. A law enacted in April forced TikTok's Chinese parent company, ByteDance, to divest from it by early next year. If ByteDance refuses, the app will be banned. TikTok challenged the law, and the highest court will start hearing arguments on January 10th. They will decide whether the April ruling violates the First Amendment.
Public support for a ban was at 50% in March of 2023, but has since dropped to just around 32% as of August, Pew Research data shows. President Trump, during his Monday press conference at Mar-a-Lago, said he has a warm spot in his heart for TikTok.
We'll take a look at TikTok. You know, I have a warm spot in my heart for TikTok because I won youth by 34 points. And there are those that say that TikTok had something to do with that.
Well, it's no secret TikTok carried the water for President-elect Donald Trump. Republicans were divided, though, on supporting the ban back in March. Kentucky's Thomas Massey, for instance, felt the bill was too overreaching. Others, like Chip Roy of Texas, expressed their concern over a foreign adversary like China having Americans' access to data.
The New York Post editorial board had a headline on Tuesday reading, "Donald Trump must not block the TikTok ban. It's the ultimate battle against abuse by big tech and big foreign government. Mr. President-elect, don't sell out to a TikTok ban. The app is a Chinese state influence op, and you were elected on a promise to get tough when social media companies collude with governments." So I'm interested to know, Amisha, because this one doesn't always neatly break down along partisan lines. I know many Republicans in favor of banning it, some are against. Same thing, Democratic side, it goes both ways. Where are you on TikTok?
I think TikTok needs more regulation. When you look at young people specifically, and that's their biggest target audience, many of them are making money off of TikTok. They've started business enterprises. It's a very hard thing to say, hey, shut down the ways and means of these young people earning their coin. But I also think that there is a significant national security risk, and we all know the data and the stats around young people's mental health. You have several states up to and including, DC is not a state, but it's one of the areas that has also done it. 13 states are suing over the addictive properties of TikTok, specifically the way their algorithm works, to where many young people cannot get off of it. And I think that, it says something when you have mental health organizations, when you have student groups, when you have a lot of parents who are also saying, hey, this is a problem for my youth, up to and including depression levels, suicide increases, and things based on some of the very things that they are seeing on TikTok that are propagated towards them every day. An all-out ban, I don't know about personally. I think that it definitely needs a certain level of regulation, particularly because of some of the unfortunate things we're seeing happen with the youth, but also because, again, it does present a national security threat. I don't think it's the only way Chinese government can spy on the United States, but I do think that we're just giving them data freely every day.
So I agree with some of the things you said and disagree with other things. I understand the national security argument. I don't think it's ridiculous at all. I absolutely expect that China asserts the power to use TikTok for nefarious ends. I think more so than, because there's other ways to get the data, as you point out. So I'm not, while that's not a non-threat, it's also kind of like, that's just like Pandora's box is open now. Big companies, governments, etc., are going to be able to get information about you involving what kind of purchases you like, what websites you visit. That is just going to be really hard to prevent moving forward. So I don't know. While that's a concern, I don't know that, and just getting rid of one social media app doesn't really change that, because all of the social media apps collect information on you, and there are ways for governments or other companies to purchase them. I am more concerned about China, I guess, directing anti-American or pro-Chinese editorial content on TikTok. However, that is a concern, but the American government also did that in terms of what content was available on Twitter and Facebook. So it's not like, so while that is a problem, we should first, get our own house in order. Then on the kid stuff, and here I think we'll have the most disagreement. I certainly recognize that that your phone, social media can be addictive, is addictive for some people, and we all would be better off our mental health, putting it away at some times. But I increasingly think there might be a moral panic on this a little bit, because the same arguments were made against TV and video games and everything else that has distracted people since the dawn of human history. We talk about the mental health outcomes and depression. I know there is some bullying on social media and for teen girls, the unhealthy body image stuff, but of course there's magazines and there's all sorts of other media devices.
We're millennials. We saw this and when TikTok didn't exist. And it was driven by magazines. It was driven by music and the music videos in particular. I don't necessarily think that you can just point to one thing and say that this is it.
And TikTok is more collaborative and creative than the other, because you react to people making their... I'm not very active on TikTok personally, but unlike Instagram, which you just passively consume the reels of, I find myself sometimes going down wormholes.
What would you say about, remember when there was like the revitalization of like the terrorist letter, the Bin Laden letter, and several others that came up, and TikTok, young people on TikTok had just discovered them. And then they were carrying on and honestly siding with terrorists and their, propaganda against America.
I mean, I thought that was silly, but I'm also not going to... I'm certainly not going to go out and say that needs to be prohibited by the government, because you have the right to read pro-terrorist propaganda. Just like, if I was saying something, if we were saying something bad, I wouldn't think the government should come in and like ban YouTube because too many people are, watching our content and the government thinks that's not good. I mean, that's just obviously like a First Amendment violation. What makes this trickier is that it's a foreign company, and foreign companies do not have rights, but really the First Amendment is a restraint on the government, right? The First Amendment is saying the government may not restrict speech. Now the speech is, and the speech is originating from us. The platform itself is foreign. So it ends up being a little bit tricky. But I kind of expect the Supreme Court to say that this ban violates the First Amendment. That would be my guess.
I think you're probably right there. I think that this is a tricky water to actually have to navigate, because on the one hand, I agree. Free speech, it is what it is. People can say things that are derogatory or say things that may upset some people. They're on there pushing, beauty products and things that may end up disfiguring you at some point. It is what...
No, my face!
But I do think that, to a point you made earlier, when you have a foreign entity that is in charge of it and they are in charge of the algorithm, there are instances where we've seen them spew things that are anti-American, and it pops up more regularly. And these young people who are not, navigating multiple media sources at once are not as apt to know, okay, well, that's something that I shouldn't be, resharing, or something that I shouldn't.
I don't know. I would give them a little bit more credit than that. I think young people are getting their news from more different sources than, older people just have the TV. If you have MSNBC or CNN or Fox on all day, how often are you changing the channel to see what the other perspective is? You know what I mean?
That bias is obviously there for older people.
Right.
As
If
well.
you're watching internet, if you're getting news from social media and internet, you're being recommended things. I think you're probably more likely to come across information from a different kind of news source than you are if you're just. Because people don't really channel surf TV anymore, right? You put it on and you leave on what you have on. So I think in some ways the echo chamber effect is less prevalent online, even though we hear so much about siloing and bubbling off. I think in practice that doesn't happen online as much as it happens on other media platforms, but certainly just getting your news from individuals who could be propagandists or something would be bad, and I just always urge people to look for multiple sources of information. Watch Rising, then go check out, whoever else, and come back for more Rising, and that's the good way to do it.
No, absolutely. Just make sure that there's a whole buffet of options that you're checking out.
A whole buffet. Sounds delicious. More to come later. Stay tuned.